All right, here we are again. It's the Aviation and sometimes other show. Paul Brennan here with you in Wellington, and
Martin Noakes also in Wellington today.
How you doing, Martin?
I'm good, thanks. Yourself?
Not too bad. Been following all the aviation news.
As we do.
There's been a lot to keep up with lately.
There is indeed.
Especially this part of the world. Let's get straight into it. We've mentioned this quite a few times before. That is the matter of the high cost of airfares to regional centres around New Zealand. People are well catered for on the trunk. That's where the result of competition is keenly felt, but certainly not those regional centres, and probably the last time there was any competition on those was back in the day when Ansett were here. And now, Martin, the Transport Minister, Jerry Brownlee, has told the New Zealand Airports Association conference in Blenheim just last week that the cost of airlines to regional centres such as Blenheim was an issue. At last.
Yes, finally they're taking some action.
We've always sort of said it costs that much because that's what they can charge. It's because they can.
Yes.
And you get the feeling that particularly in New Zealand underwrites its successful business model on a very high regional airfare regime.
There's nothing stopping them. No competition, nothing. So, I mean, and some of the fares are quite outrageous. Of course, they keep the average down by every now and again offering a few specials, but they're generally out of the time most people want to travel. But flights from Wanganui, Taupo, places like that, they are pretty expensive if you think how much you can get a flight across the Tasman for.
And you think about those aircraft, the C-1900s, a 19-20-seater, but you start getting up into Dash 8 and ATR territory, and these aircraft are not that expensive to operate compared to your average jet. They've got quite a few seats on board. You do sort of get the feeling that there's quite a bit of fat in the system there.
There has to be, and I mean the whole point of those regional transports is that they're relatively cheap to fly. And I mean, how many people fit in an ATR now? It's quite a few, isn't it?
Over 60.
Yeah.
Mr. Brownlee confirmed the government was concerned about the cost of air travel to regional centres such as I mentioned, Blenheim. This story is from the Marlborough Express, after all, and he's saying that it's being discussed at official level, and he's making the point there's no competition and there is price maximisation, as they call it. Question is, what can you do? What can the government do? It turns its back on its version of private enterprise if it starts to meddle around in that.
Yes, what can it do? What should it do? I mean, how important is decentralisation of the economy to the New Zealand government? Should they subsidise it? Should they just have a quiet word with Air New Zealand, which is, after all, government-owned?
But it's an operational matter.
That's true.
So you're not allowed to talk about these things.
But yeah, it does come down to the question, how important is decentralisation, and do they want to stop people moving to Auckland? Because that's basically your only option.
The problem is New Zealand market is not big enough to accommodate two main regional operators. So you're never going to get a competitive tension in the marketplace enough to result in two successful operations offering really good prices.
Other countries get by this having competition, other modes of transport, so they have a better road system or they have a rail system. But if you're in a regional city in New Zealand and you've got to get to Auckland, there's only one game in town, because realistically you're not going to be driving it.
No, and there is no railway anymore.
There is no railway anymore.
Not two branch lines. So
you're up $600 for a return flight from, say, Taupo to Auckland. That's generally where most people seem to fly.
You could argue, on the other hand, though, that Air New Zealand is providing good quality service, good quality equipment. It's safe, it's reliable, and there's a price to be paid for that.
There is a price to be paid, and of course I don't think people mind paying, and I don't think people mind paying a fair price, but it just does seem rather expensive. What makes up the prices? I mean, are the airports charging outrageous fees? I mean, that's a story we've also touched on in the past. The landing fees. Apparently, airport costs in New Zealand are amongst the highest in the world, and I don't suppose the regional airports are letting themselves be locked out of that lucrative market. So,
but they don't have one customer.
Exactly. So you can one customer, you really charge them what they want.
Yeah, well, if they are getting away with overcharging and this airline's prepared to pay for those charges, you realise exactly what a cosy situation it could be for everyone.
And it probably is quite cosy, because all you got to do is pass it on to the consumer and say, well, our hands are tied.
There's no mention of any of those details, of any breakdown in the operation in the story that we're referring to here from, in fact, the end of October. So, yeah, we can't really say. how that operates.
Although Christchurch Airport's just getting a bit of a hammering for their excess costs, aren't they?
Yeah, it's not an unknown attitude
No.
amongst airports in this country. Watch that space. Another story relating to provincial air services, and we've talked about this recently. That is the service between Masterton and Auckland, which I think Air New Zealand is giving away early next year. Wairarapa MP John Hayes saying on the Stuff website that two suppliers are being looked at to both operate bigger services than the Air New Zealand subsidiary Eagle Air had from Masterton through to Auckland. But they have to extend the runway by nearly 200 metres to 1,400 metres and widen it by a few metres to 30 metres. So obviously they're talking about bigger aircraft.
Yeah, I wonder who that is.
Vincent Aviation. So why would you be extending nearly 200 metres to 1,400, which is what, in feet terms, about 5,000 feet?
Yeah, coming up for 5,000.
Well, that's, that's getting into small jet territory, and
That's very interesting.
that's a 146.
Yeah, I wonder
Or a
who
Dash 8.
I wonder who they've got in mind. I can't see anybody operating a 146 on that on that trip.
Well, they're talking about suppliers operating planes double the capacity of the Eagle Air Beechcraft.
So that'd be a Dash 8, wouldn't it?
Have to be, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Vincent's got a Dash 8, don't they?
They do. They got a 100, I think.
There you go.
So what's that, about a 38-seater?
Yeah.
40-seater?
3 days a week.
Yeah.
The trouble is with a lot of these schemes is don't underestimate the power of the loyalty scheme and don't underestimate the power of the corporate buy. So if I'm working for a big New Zealand corporate, let's say I'm in the Wairarapa working at a dairy products factory, I would probably just take a taxi to Wellington Airport and get the air points.
Yeah.
Because that would be paid for.
But take a taxi from Masterton?
Or a shuttle or whatever it is they do, or jump in the company.
That's hundreds of bucks.
Jump in the company car and get a night in the hotel.
Or just drive your car over. Okay. It's not that far away, really, is it?
Not really.
Some other news. Air New Zealand will fly the first of its brand new 787-9 Dreamliners on Perth, Auckland. In a move, they say, will raise the level of competition facing Qantas on Trans-Tasman routes. This in the Stuff Travel section. 2 economy cabins of the aircraft will seat 263. They are ordering 10, as we know. 18 lie-flat seats in business class. So-called herringbone layout.
Yeah.
That's where they're all sort of staggered, right?
At an angle, yeah.
At an angle. Is there any first class? Are they talking about first class?
Well,
here?
what's happened in New Zealand is that Business Premier has essentially become first class.
Right.
And then they've got their premium economy behind that.
Basically, these are just replacing 767s, aren't they?
Yes.
So far, this is not a new enlightened route. This is an existing route. And as soon as that first 9 arrives, one of the 76s. See you later. Goodbye.
Yeah, high-tech 767.
Yeah.
Interesting, they're getting under 300 people in the 900, and Jetstar are putting 335 in the 800.
That's incredible.
That's a subtle difference.
And what, there's a good 30-40 difference in seating?
Yes.
Capacity, ultimately, in the two?
Yes, so Jetstar are going to be cramming them in.
The airline will fly the Dreamliners then, they're calling them game-changer aircraft, by the way, through to Tokyo and Shanghai as they get more on strength.
So basically any route where they're using a 777-200 or a 767 will be replaced by a 78.
Yeah. Still a bit more news from this part of the world. Air New Zealand have sold their Cuddle class seat to an unknown Asian carrier, it looks like at this stage. So there you go.
Oh, it's good luck to them. They've put quite a lot of money into developing their various seats, and I think that Cuddle class thing, it looks pretty good. You fold up a sort of a bench between the between where the seat normally ends and the back of the seat in front of you, and you turn a three seat row into a 2-person double-ish bed.
But you can't have 3 people in that row.
No, you can't have 3 people in the row. So you end up, effectively, you have to buy the extra seat.
Yeah. All right, so that's interesting. Also, Air New Zealand saying no intention of taking Virgin Australia private. There was a story just in the last few days that speculated upon that. Christopher Luxon, the head of Air New Zealand, said it was important that Virgin remained independent as a listed entity. People are swooping around, though, aren't they?
Yes.
Why, though?
Get a big slice of the Australasian market. I guess they sensing a bit of weakness in Qantas, perhaps. Be interesting when Air New Zealand gets put on the block, to what extent Etihad buys in, because Etihad owned a bit more than 19% of Virgin. Singapore Airlines owns a bit more than 19% of Virgin. Richard Branson owns 10%. And Air New Zealand owns 23%, or coming up to 23%. So if Etihad can get a reasonable chunk of Air New Zealand, they'd effectively control Air New Zealand's stake in Virgin. And then it comes down to who Richard Branson sells his 10% to.
Which could be worth quite a bit.
It could be quite interesting.
Yes, Air New Zealand CEO is saying that they're happy, they're where they want to be, which is between 20 and 26% shareholder of this airline. And he says that there's a very good relationship between both Etihad and Singapore Airlines at CEO level. So,
yes, of course, with corporate press releases these days, it either means what they say or it means exactly the opposite. So we're none the wiser, actually.
Yeah, how do you know? Auckland Airport talking about a $2.4 billion expansion, big plans, including a sweeping crescent-shaped domestic and international terminal on one of the sites. I don't know about these grandiose airport plans.
It's all about
I
turning...
thought an airport was just an airport, you know?
No, it's a shopping mall with a runway.
Yeah, but what that does is it increases the expense of everyone who uses it.
Of course.
For what sort of gain? I mean, are you getting on planes any quicker?
No. In fact, the whole point is to get you on planes slower so you spend more time in the retail section.
Because, you know, they're going to have to borrow this money. They're going to have to charge
Absolutely.
X amount.
There's only one... we are the people who will pay for this expansion, and the only way they'll get their money back is by increasing the fees to the airlines, which will in turn pass them on to us, and if we go shopping there more.
It's a 30-year vision.
It's quite nice at Schiphol Airport in the Netherlands. They've actually turned the airport into a shopping mall. So both sides of... So you can go to the airport on the weekend to go shopping. It's like Westgate.
And do people do that?
Well, I guess they do, because it's there's all sorts of shops in there, and you can go and look at the planes, and there's actually a proper retail mall before you even get on the plane.
Okay. So for a lot of people, they probably don't even know they're in an airport.
Well, yeah.
So what's that noise? Oh, it's a plane. Oh, are we in an airport?
Apart from the name of the station and the aviation-themed art, you could quite easily forget you're in a bit of a shopping mall. I mean, it's not a great shopping mall, but if you want to go and have a day at the airport, yeah, it's quite easy.
Chief Executive Adrian Littlewood says in the NZ Herald business section that they were expecting passenger numbers to increase from around 14.5 million to 40 million by 2044.
Well, that's what you put in a business case, isn't it? So that it apparently makes sense, so everyone says, yes, let's do it. And
but,
then,
I mean, whoever said that was achievable?
Well, the guy in the press release.
But it might not be anywhere near it.
What are you questioning a press release, Paul?
Oh, how dare I?
What's wrong with you?
So they're going to have put together a plan to get capital for that ahead, and you know the prices will go up before they've even built anything.
Absolutely, because you want to check your revenue stream.
They're talking about a new domestic terminal, but I mean, I was in Auckland only a couple of weeks ago. Those domestic terminals are fine.
Yeah,
they do the job just fine.
But did you have a satisfying retail experience in the domestic terminal?
I didn't have a retail experience.
Well, there you go. So it's
I
a
tell you what,
failure.
You can't actually get dropped off outside the terminal anymore.
No.
That's one crazy thing they've done there. That's what I say. It's an airport. You need to get to the plane. Primary mission is to get to the terminal close by so you can get off there and then get on the plane. Am I missing something?
Yeah.
Making you have to walk another half K to the terminal to get the plane seems to work against the primary mission.
It does, unless you think you're running a shopping mall.
Or you're giving preference to every man and his taxi driver.
Yeah, well, there's that too. But no, you wait, and they'll build a new domestic terminal. It'll cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and you'll be distracted by the goods on offer. I think that's the thinking. Which
are all marked up and more expensive than...
Yes.
You know.
I never buy anything in an airport. Ever.
No, well, are you
on principle.
Are you crazy?
Yeah.
All right, so watch Auckland, the grand Auckland Airport vision unfold in front of our eyes.
Unravel or unfold?
Well, it'll never unravel because there's nowhere else to go.
No.
They can almost do what they want.
They can and they do.
And they do, because they can. New Zealand firms Flight Simulators sell in US and China. Know a bit about this. I went down to Christchurch where Mike Perot, the mortgage guy, and his mates make these replicas of 737 flight decks. Really quite accurate. Don't think they have the motion.
No motion.
But they've used Microsoft Flight Simulator to provide the graphics. And it's pretty good. And I think the intention was to offer them as some sort of training device, but because they don't have certified components, because the real flight simulator makers were pretty hot on that there's no certification of anything can take place in them. So I don't think that market was available, but you may have seen one in a mall around the place. There's one in Wellington. I think there's one in Auckland. Probably still is. They're not bad, and I can see these being quite a hit, in especially big population areas, with lots of retail. Hey, they could put one in the new airport retail development. Put it that way.
Probably will.
Now, that would be getting close back to the knitting.
It was $100 though, wasn't it, for an hour?
Yeah.
It's quite expensive.
That was too expensive. They're selling for $500,000 each, and he says they've got customers in Boston and the tourist island of Hainan. Is it Hainan?
Hainan, yeah.
Hainan.
Just off China.
Yeah. So, good on him.
Yes, good
He's
luck to
an
them.
interesting guy, Mike Perot. He's a former, I think he was a pilot for a while for Mount Cook Airlines.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, so he has an aviation background.
Okay. A friend of mine did it in the Gold Coast. He thought it was great.
They call it Flight Experience. They've got stores in Jakarta and 14 simulators in 9 other countries.
Oh, well done to them.
So there's a bit of Kiwi technology exporting going on.
Yeah.
Unsubsidized.
Well, yeah.
You've seen the In-Out Burger joint just at the end of Los Angeles runway, the one they all fly over and sit in the car park and watch the planes.
Every time I transfer through Los Angeles, I go to the In-Out Burger. I walk round to the In-Out Burger.
Good tasting burgers?
Great burgers.
Yeah?
And great chips.
Yeah?
Yes.
Great chips.
And then you sit, and it's always packed, and then you sit outside there and you watch the planes coming over at 300-400 feet above you. It's a great place.
Yeah, and there's some great photos.
Oh, fantastic.
People take from there.
Yeah. And there's a great Mexican place just up the road as well, I have to say. But
Great chips.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're coming to Auckland.
Yeah, but they're not at the end of the runway, are they?
No.
So I'll never go there.
Not quite the same, is it?
Yeah. They could give me a mud pie at the end of the runway. I'd probably still eat. I'd still eat it.
Nice chips. It's a pop-up store. It's not
Okay.
not a regular store. It's a pop-up store to see in Ponsonby to see whether it's going to go.
I reckon they should put it in that swamp at the end of the runway in Auckland. It'd be great.
I'd go.
I'd be there.
Drive-through.
Eating me chips.
Yeah, 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Got any of those great chips?
Yeah. No, it's good. In-N-Out Burger's great. Anybody goes through LA has to go there.
Okay, well, that's got a lot to do with aviation because of that LA link. Fiji Airways got their third A330 in the last few weeks, which means the 74's on the way out.
They got to be smiling, half the cost.
Gosh, think about how much extra cash they're going to have.
Yeah, raking it in.
And I guess they'll go straight to the desert, those two old 400s, originally Singapore Airlines, then to Ansett, and they got them cheap, I think, through Qantas.
They did. They got them through Qantas. Yep.
Yeah, I've actually flown up to the States on one of those 74's.
Yeah, was it good?
Yeah, a bit ropey.
Well, the A330 would be pretty flashy.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's got the legs. But I see already the Fijian exporters are complaining about cargo capacity going down. There's still more capacity underfloor on a 747.
Yeah, but how many A330 are they going to get in the end? Are they sticking with three, or they might get more?
3. The CEO of Air Pacific, Stefan Pilcher, is saying, he said in Nandi, that it's sort of too bad. I mean, they're being pushed and pulled both ways. They need something that's good for passengers. It's a tourism operation there, and the A330 is fantastic for passengers, but does mean reduced cargo.
Maybe they'll have to go and buy a freighter.
An A330 freighter.
Yeah, there you go.
Air New Zealand and Qantas are providing some capacity for them to take up the slack. I've said it before, they look impressive in that new livery.
They look very nice, don't they?
They really do.
It'll be a good calling card for Fiji.
And that product, their product is just way enhanced.
Must be. I've never done via Fiji, but it must be quite nice with a break in the middle. I mean,
It is.
How far is it from Nandi on to?
It's 9 hours up to LA or thereabouts.
Okay, so it's still quite a long way.
I think I got the afternoon flight out of Auckland to Nandi, and that's about 3 hours, just over. It's 1,100 and something miles,
Okay.
or 1,300 miles around there. And then, though, there was like 5 hours
Hanging around
the Nandi terminal with Indian duty-free sellers, trying to
hawkers.
make you buy stuff
Yeah.
relentlessly.
Yeah.
They're very.
So they've got the whole retail thing at airports down to a masterate, have they?
Oh yeah. Well, if you're in the transition terminal, where you're not actually, you're sort of a captive audience.
Yeah.
And they come around and sort of, would you like to come and have a look at my goods?
Yeah.
No thanks. Oh, come on, and they're great traders. People in this country will be familiar with Aerolineas Argentinas, the flag carrier of Argentina, of course. They've been coming here for a long time. I think they even used to fly SPs here back in the day, and more recently A340s, 200s and 300s. Now they've got an order, I see, Martin, for A330-200s, and people have been wondering what's going to happen to those Singapore Airlines A340-500s, the ones that they did the longest
Yeah, 18,
scheduled
18
flights
hours, I think, yeah.
Yeah, in
Singapore and Newark, New Jersey.
That's right, and through to LA, not so long, but still long. Basically, what I think it was 21 hours, wasn't it?
I think that was the longest flight. Yeah.
And people will say, well, those A340-500s are junk now.
Yes.
They'll go to the desert or something.
Bang.
But Aerolineas is they're taking every single one.
But interestingly enough, they've bought those planes that have absolutely no range restrictions just about anywhere, and now they've cancelled their Sydney flights.
Yeah.
So they're going to be using them to go to Madrid non-stop and places like that.
Well, but you know they're getting them cheap. They've got to be.
They will be getting them cheap, yeah.
And they must be more efficient than the other ones. Otherwise, they wouldn't be bumping off the old ones unless they're coming off leases or something.
Well, I think the older ones were range restricted, or weight restricted over those distances. The A340-500s go anywhere.
Yeah.
It's 8,500 miles.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's a very long way.
So they're taking them. So, for those who are criticising that particular version of the A340, it's not so. There's still a demand out there.
No, they've barely landed, and they'll be resprayed and off again.
Yeah, there you go, resprayed. And the A330, well, no surprise there. Obviously, commonality is the thinking there. Because they would be a candidate for the Dreamliner, wouldn't they?
You'd think so, because they're quite a big Boeing user.
Well, they have been in the past.
Yeah, and all their regional planes, all their
7.3s, are they?
They're all 7.3s, yeah.
Yeah. Might not end up that way, though.
Yes.
I mean, Airbus seems to be eating Boeing's lunch on a lot of...
at the moment, yeah.
A lot of occasions.
777, the new one, will pick them up a bit, though.
Couple of stories out of Seattle. Japan, Mitsubishi offered to make the 777X wing. We were talking about that before, so there's been some action there.
Well, they're having a huge fight with the Machinists Union at the moment. That's 31,500 people.
Whoa.
And they're not happy with the offer Boeing's put on the table, and then it's all around the industrialization of the new 777 program. So the idea was that Boeing is going to bring a lot of the work in-house. The machinists have refused the first offer made, and then this is when Mitsubishi tabled their unsolicited offer to make the wings a lot cheaper by building...
That was quite a naughty thing to do, because that's like imposing yourself in on an industrial dispute.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised if Boeing had tipped them to do it.
Oh, really?
So why don't you come in with this offer, and that'll frighten our machinists a bit.
Where's the payoff for the...
Well, if the machinists don't play ball, Mitsubishi would end up building the wings. And
now they make the wings for the Dreamliner.
They make the wings for the Dreamliner, yeah. And I see in their proposal they're saying instead of flying them around the world, we'll build 6 special ships just to transport wings to and from Japan to wherever the
roll-on, roll-off cargo ships.
Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised if the game that's being played there is that Boeing said, why don't you secretly prepare a proposal and we'll announce it when we see fit? And it just happens to be in the heat of negotiations with the Machinists Union.
What are they offering?
Well, they're taking away the healthcare. They want the machinists to self-fund their healthcare, obviously using Obamacare probably. And instead of putting their money into a pension scheme, they're just going to put it into a savings plan. Both sides won't budge. There's no sort of consensus. They just seem to butt heads every couple of years, and it just gets worse and worse. So I don't know who's wrong.
And you hear a lot of criticism from American commentators about how Airbus is structured and the incentives and the sort of socialization of their effort somehow being sort of I don't know, wrong. But you don't have to scratch too far below the surface to see that Boeing gets a huge amount of support from local governments, especially in Washington state, because they're always worried that, and Boeing has threatened so many times to up sticks and move, runs into billions of dollars, and they're not beyond playing state off against each other.
No.
It's a bit rich to criticize the Europeans when you've got huge tax breaks going to the likes of Boeing, who turn over $85 billion in revenue. They make a $4 billion profit every year. And, of course, they have huge defense contracts in place that probably earn them more than the...
It does. It earns more than the rest of the company
airplane manufacturing.
Yeah. They got $3 billion in the early 2000s to help them with the industrialization of the 787 program. Then in 2005, they decided the staff or their people weren't playing the game, so they moved a lot of production they set up a second production line in Charleston, South Carolina, which is non-union. Apparently the workers there aren't too happy because they're all on temporary contracts, and they're not even employed temporarily by Boeing. They're all coming through temp agencies, so they've got no career path. So apparently the morale in Charleston's really, really low. Now they've started negotiating again with the state, Washington State, for the 777 program. Now, Washington State's, the politicians there have come up with a subsidy package, $9 billion
Yes.
over 27 years. Now, if I'm working this out properly, that works out to about $6.5 million a week over 27 years in tax breaks.
Well, that's huge.
If that's not a government subsidy, I'm not sure what is.
There's a quote here from a person who's described as one tortured Boeing worker. He says, it's like I'm smiling while I'm being kicked in the balls, but it's better than being decapitated.
Yeah, I remember once when I was in the States, I was working there, and the General Dynamics had just lost, or they just closed down the F-16 line.
Right.
And that was in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And it was 14, I think the first tranche of firings was 14,000 people. They closed the factory. And there's a company in the States called U-Haul where you can rent trailers and delivery vans, your own van, U-Haul it. They were just trucking in empty U-Haul vans and trailers in from all over the US because these people were just packing up and leaving. They were just getting out of Dodge. And people just leaving their houses.
Well, you can do that in America. You can just hand back the key.
You just hand back the key because
and cut your losses. You don't have that.
Yeah, because the bank owns the house. Yeah.
I wish we had that here.
Yeah, they were just bolting, and actually a lot of them are going up to Seattle now to try and get jobs with Boeing.
Yeah.
But that's how quickly these programs end in the States. If Congress or something decides it ain't going to happen,
the money's gone.
Bang, it's not going to happen. See ya.
And they're dangling this 777X wing fabrication assembly as the sort of, if you don't give us the money, we won't do that here. But I mean, that's unpatriotic, isn't it?
Yeah, well, according to one of the reports I read, Boeing factor in these subsidies in their early financial planning. So somewhere in the 5-6 years ago, that has said in order to do this, we're going to need $9 billion from the state, and they will have worked towards that.
As part of the business plan.
Yes, and it's interesting that the consulting company advising Boeing and the lobbying company that they're using to try and lobby the government to get this is the same company, and the consulting company that the government have been using to find out whether this makes sense is the same company. So they're playing both sides.
Yeah. Well, it just goes to show in the end it's all about the money, isn't it?
I think the only people that are shocked about it are the outsiders. I think it's for both sides of this, it's completely normal. Boeing wants $9 billion and the government or the state government wants to give it to them. Because the politician at the end of the day can say, I saved 31,500 jobs. Whether or not they're actually saved, 3 or 4 years down the line when that particular politician's moved on, he really couldn't care less.
I wish someone would do this here in New Zealand, but someone's taken in Ghana of all places, and I think I saw this aircraft a few times at Heathrow, DC-10-30.
Ghana Airlines.
It was around for years, and it's been turned into Africa's first restaurant in an airplane. The La Tante, is it? Or La Tante DC-10 restaurant and bar in Accra, Ghana. And, they've taken the engines off, but otherwise it's
all there.
It's all there. And pretty roomy, too, I got to say.
Go and eat in a DC-10.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that would go quite well here, wouldn't it?
Well, that's where they should put the In-N-Out burger.
In an old 7.4 or something.
Yeah. In the swamp at the end of the runway. With like a jetty to get to it.
The Transport Minister is saying, this is a female, that the aviation sector had played a critical role in opening up the country for development and tourism. So it's sort of like natural that they might as well have the aircraft as a restaurant.
Have a restaurant in the DC-10. They always look a bit sad, though, don't they? These sort of hulks.
Yeah.
Propped up and...
Mind you, they don't... It's a bit garish in that part of the world, isn't it? The way they paint things up and...
I've seen
it's sort of on a bare piece of earth. It's not actually that appetizing.
Well, I've seen the one in Sweden as well, the hotel, which is
the airport.
7.4 at the airport. It doesn't look great.
Really?
It looks like an old airplane on a pole.
Looks quite nice inside, though.
Yeah, they've done. It's Swedish, so they've done it quite nicely.
Of course.
Yeah, but
good quality.
I always like going to Sweden to see those ATPs. Those the last gasp of the Hawker City 746.
Why do they all end up there? 748, yeah. Why do they end up there? They seem to have really embraced them.
Yeah, and I think there's a crowd in Scotland also use them as for Royal Mail flights around the UK.
Manx Airlines.
I don't know who it is, but they're a big plane.
They are, yeah. What, about 70-seater, 80-seater?
Big props on them.
Yeah, big grunt machines.
A friend of mine used to fly a lot. He worked in the oil industry. He used to fly London, Aberdeen a lot. And he flew every week. He was doing a warning system for oil refineries. Anyway, He, on 2 of his flights, had to turn back due to engine fire. Apparently, that was a problem. Oil would collect in the jet pipe,
Oh,
and it would catch fire.
not too good.
It happened a lot
On the
ATP.
advanced turboprop.
Yes, and that was one of the reasons they took them out of service, because
But I think they
nothing ever happened, but it was lots of black smoke and quite
right.
frightening.
Yeah, not good for the passengers.
No.
They were top of the range PT6s, weren't they?
Yes,
Or were they bigger than that?
I think they were a giant PT6.
Yeah.
That's the biggest PT ever made. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Basically, essentially 2 PTs joined together.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Quite big and impressive aircraft, and a lot of them became freighters in Sweden.
Yes, they put big doors on them and use them as packet freighters.
Speaking of Sweden, there's talk of an ABBA reunion,
Oh dear.
40th reunion.
Really?
So, if you're really serious, you go to Sweden, fly in an ATP and
As a box. You'd have to be a box.
see the ABBA show.
You'd have to put yourself in a box.
All right. Gadgets.
I would just like to say how happy I am with my Nexus 7 2013 tablet. Otherwise,
That's nice.
It is quite
You've
nice.
got it open there, and gosh, nice resolution on the
Very
screen.
high resolution
Yeah.
and very fast, and 7 inches, so not too big.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't get in the way.
No, it's you could almost still put it in your pocket.
Almost.
Is it robust?
It is quite robust. It's made by Asus, or Asus, or
Okay,
however
well
you
they're a
pronounce
big brand.
Yes, and they know how to make tablets. This is the second one I've had, and I must admit I'm very impressed.
Very good.
Yes.
Okay, that's all we've got time for. We'll be back in a week or two. In the meantime, Paul Brennan in Wellington, and
Martin Oakes right next to Paul.
we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye.